vaccines. Dr. Lachie Dick from Edinburgh. Dr. Martin Docherty from, where are you right now, Martin?
I'm based in Gulfport, Mississippi.
All right. Jim Feeney from New York, Dr. Jim Feeney, and Dr. Robert Gray from Edinburgh as well. So thanks very much, everybody, for making the time. And it comes at a time when the piping world in the Northern Hemisphere is thinking a lot about the prospect of a 2021 season, given that there are vaccines either in place or on the way. So just want to try to get your thoughts, because you do have that unique perspective of being a physician, but also very accomplished pipers as well. So why don't we just start with your thoughts about how soon you see a safe return really realistically happening for pipe bans around the world, and especially in the Northern Hemisphere. So maybe Jim Feeney, Dr. Feeney, what do you think?
So I think the short answer to that is, after the vaccine becomes available and widely distributed, it looks like the UK has done somewhat of a better job in securing a lot of doses to get their at-risk people vaccinated very quickly. Hopefully in the US, the healthcare workers will start within the next week or two. I think the first doses I saw today have been put on trucks and shipped out. Some of the data seems to suggest that we're not really going to get vaccinated across the board until maybe summer or even autumn, depending on the distribution of that. So I'd say the short answer is after the vaccine is given to everybody who needs it.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Lachie Dick, what do you think of that from a perspective in Scotland? Do you think you're on the same kind of timeline over there? And Dr. Gray, if you've got thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think I'd have to echo the same thoughts, really. I think really what we're looking at is needing to get a vaccine that's, well distributed amongst society. And that way there's enough people with sort of coverage against the virus. And obviously we're quite similar here. As we said, maybe a couple of weeks before we started vaccinating in my hospital last week. And that's been sort of pretty much standard across the UK. But obviously Scotland has got other challenges. Certainly the vaccine that we have, issues with storage, and obviously the geographical nature of Scotland as well. So it's going to take a bit of time before the vaccine gets to all the bits, the places in Scotland and the word is really it's going to be summer time roughly as well before you're looking at the majority of the population vaccinated. So I think it's pretty similar here in Scotland, I would say.
Yeah, Dr. Robert Gray, does that match up with your thinking as well?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the vaccine really is our only way out of this, and much as people might be diverted by stuff they read on social media, it is our route out. There's going to be no sort of overall immunity in the population without it. And as Lachie said, we started in Lothian last week vaccinating people. I got my vaccine last Wednesday, and it was most of us in the hospital realise it's our job to get the vaccine because we don't want to be the person that passes it on to other people. But if you think of that in a larger sense, the more people that are vaccinated, the better it is. But I think it is, it's going to be at least a summer until we have, a good hit in terms of population, and that makes it very, very difficult for having people this summer.
Yeah. Martin Docherty, Dr. Docherty, you've been a specialist with the U.S. Army as a colonel, specializing in trauma medicine. But your background in pipe bans as well. Maybe talk about some of the unique factors that pipe bans might have to think about versus kind of the general population, considering that in order for pipe bans to get back at it, they've got to get back together and practice. So some thoughts around that pipe bans might be particularly concerned about.
Well, I think when it comes to pipe ban, the social distancing is almost impossible. Unless you're having the individual pipers stand 6 to 7 feet away from each other, tune their own drones, making sure the tones are I can see that working for practice, but for competition, it's just not going to fly. And definitely the travel aspect, I think, is going to be huge, especially for the North American bands, if they're even wanting to look at going to Europe or even possibly Australia, where the numbers are lower at the moment. My feeling is that airlines are going to mandate vaccination to travel. I know that hasn't really come out officially, but I just don't see these large travel firms not mandating vaccination just for liability reasons. But social distancing in pipe bands is difficult, as you know.
Yeah, and Jim Feeney, you're on the East Coast of the United States, and a lot of bands, from that area in Canada as well, travel all over the place. What are your thoughts around that as well? Do you think airlines are going to be mandating proof of vaccination before, widespread travel?
I really hope so. I mean, right now the vaccinations, as I've read about it anyway, are going to be approved for people 16 years of age and older. And so some of especially the kids bands and things like that are going to have some people who are under that age limit. And I know that there are plenty of youth organizations in Scotland that are under that age limit. So that's going to be a big disaster to try to determine who's really been vaccinated and who hasn't. But I really hope that people take this seriously and get their vaccinations, because, so many people are talking about their rights not to wear masks and their rights not to, be vaccinated and things like that. Which I think is a little bit reckless when it comes to, then getting on a plane or even playing a pipe, But yeah, I think the travel is going to be difficult in any respect until, people are vaccinated, and we start to see the numbers tick down after that.
Yeah, maybe for the doctors based in Scotland, are you seeing, more widespread adoption of adhering to the rules and lockdowns and masks and things, and perhaps we're seeing in the United States and Canada for that matter?
I think in some senses it depends where you are, and it really depends on the individuals. We've seen some very good episodes or instances of adherence, but we've also seen quite a lot of frustrating episodes of large gatherings of people partying, you name it, trying to get round restrictions, people traveling between high prevalence areas and low prevalence areas. So it's very difficult. I would say we don't have the same push of people being anti-mask wearers and anti-vaxxers, but there is that element of society, and a lot of it is based around noise on the internet and stuff that is really not that useful for people to be reading. But this is a society we live in now, that some people would rather get their information from Twitter than from a government announcement or a newspaper. But I think, in a place like Edinburgh, we have seen very good sort of adherence, and we have consequently had lower levels of virus than the rest of the country. I think it's something else that's key to this as well, though. It's also, we know that the virus hits certain people and certain parts of society harder, and certainly in the areas of Scotland with higher levels of deprivation, we've seen far more COVID. And I think that is probably the case across most countries in the world. So there's a big link between deprivation and this virus. And if you think of the broad brush of society that's involved in pipe bands, there's quite a lot of vulnerable people that are, out there playing in bands that could be affected by this. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. It's protecting our vulnerable that is the thing here.
Yeah.
Robert, I'm sorry, Andrew. I just had a quick question for Robert. Were you involved in the research that identified the 5 different genes that seem to be affiliated with or associated with worse outcomes? I know that came out of University of Edinburgh, if I'm not mistaken. It just came out a day or two ago.
Yeah, no, so obviously I'd love it if I was associated with that paper in Nature, but I know the team that set it up, and actually there's a very good. It's very good to bring that up, because what that shows is actually the thing that got that research over the line was a massive group of people working together and being prepared to do hard science, and being organized. And I think, there's a lesson there for everything to do with COVID. You've got to work together, you've got to be organized, you've got to expect the unexpected. So, and that bit of work has pushed us, forward massively in the last week. And you combine that with what we know already about things like steroids working with sick patients and also the vaccine. There's a lot of reasons to be hopeful, but I think we need to manage expectations in terms of, we can be hopeful, but we have to realize that maybe gathering in band practices and furthermore movement of people to big competitions is not going to happen in the near future, but it will come back. But we just need to be patient and work with the science and the treatments that come on the vaccination.
Ostensibly, once you know the 5 genes that are associated with worsened outcomes, people could go and get a test for that and say, hey, I'm at risk for worse outcomes from COVID. Maybe I should stay home. Whereas people who don't have any of the 5 could say, I've been vaccinated, I can travel, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just kind of spitballing that because it seems like more information is better.
Yeah, I think that the slight difficulty with that strategy is obviously we're looking at a population effect of these genes rather than an individual effect. So Dr. Kenny Bailey, who did the research, he has been on the media here over the weekend talking about that and saying that it's a massive advance, but also they now need to go and test these sort of pathways. One of the pathways already, or the major pathway they found, there are drugs available already. So there's a lot of hope that from this we'll be able to translate it into treatments quite quickly. But yeah, it's all part of the sort of information gathering process. And unfortunately, I think with COVID, we might find out much of what we want to know now once everyone's vaccinated and hopefully the problems die down. But COVID's not going to go away. Let's face it. Even when we vaccinated the population, we know that respiratory viruses do tend to hang around even when we have very successful vaccinations like for the flu. So the illness will still be with us, I think, but just in a very low level once we get through this.
Yeah, Dr. Lachie Dick, given your knowledge of pipe bands and how they like to, everybody's knowledge of pipe bands, like to, be together, and it's a very, very social thing. Do you see there being an issue with, bands uniformly having to be vaccinated before they can get together, or will there be this, people just wanting to come to practice anyway? And do you foresee a bit of a challenge there with pipe bands in particular?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think I do, because from my own experience in bands, I'm sure it's the same as everybody else. It's not uncommon that you car share to practices, so you're in close proximity to people for that. And obviously on the day of competitions, it's obviously, as you said, there's a very sociable aspect to it. And, looking at some of all the data that's come from, at least from Scotland and the UK, we know that transmission rates in bars, restaurants, pubs, these sorts of things, the rates are higher, and that's why we have tougher restrictions on those venues at the moment. So, given the cohort of people and the nature of the hobbies involved and things, I think it was going to be a challenge without having widespread vaccinations. The other thing as well that Robert briefly touched on about the sort of deprivation and different sort of backgrounds. The other thing without a vaccine is pipers come from and drummers come from all different walks of life, and a single outbreak in one band, you could go and pass it on to 30 other different places. I've worked with, I've played in bands with people who are other medical professionals, working care homes, and there's potential spreading it into more vulnerable people if they've not been vaccinated. So I really think it's going to be very difficult to see any meaningful return to sort of widespread piping and drumming in groups until everyone is pretty much vaccinated.